Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. In the quaint, tree-lined avenues of a serene Portland suburb, Eleanor Harper's life seemed to gleam with the polish of perfection. She was a graceful woman in her early 40s, residing in a charming craftsman home bathed in the soft glow of Oregon's misty sunlight. Her two daughters, bright and poised, filled the house with laughter, while her meticulously tended rose garden was the envy of the neighborhood. Her husband, Daniel Harper, was a figure of quiet admiration, a dependable man who'd built a cybersecurity firm from scratch and still spent Saturday mornings tinkering with the girls' tablets in his faded flannel. To anyone peering in, Eleanor's life was a tapestry of contentment, the kind that inspired cozy novels. But beneath the surface, a quiet unrest was stirring. It wasn't a sudden upheaval, no dramatic clash of emotions. It was subtler, a faint whisper, a nagging thought that crept into her mind during the still hours. Was this all there was? Had she faded into the background of her own story, no longer seen, no longer vibrant? Daniel was the epitome of devotion. His steady gaze never wandered, his kindness unwavering. He adored her, and she, in her way, cherished him. Yet, something vital was slipping away like sand through her fingers. The shift began innocently enough. A lingering glance at a new project manager at her firm, Lucas Reed, a man in his early 30s with tousled dark hair and a disarming smile. His energy was electric, unburdened by the weight of routine or responsibility. Their conversations, initially professional, grew warmer, laced with a playful edge. Lucas had a way of making her feel noticed, as if her thoughts carried weight again. What started as casual banter soon deepened into something intoxicating, a pull she hadn't felt in years. Their first kiss didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like a lifeline, a gasp of air after years of holding her breath. It happened in a quiet moment after a late meeting, in the dim glow of an empty boardroom. By the time they stumbled into a hotel room weeks later, curtains drawn and hearts racing, it wasn't an accident. It was a choice. They fell into each other with a hunger that drowned out the world. Afterward, Eleanor lay staring at the ceiling, her pulse still thrumming, knowing she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. That night, she slipped into bed beside Daniel, her face a mask of calm. But everything had changed. Daniel, ever observant since the shift, he didn't confront her, didn't raise his voice. He simply watched, his silence heavier than any accusation. Eleanor's double life unfurled over the following weeks. Stolen moments in discreet hotels, a hidden phone tucked in her purse, lies crafted with surgical precision. To the world, she remained the impeccable wife and mother, presiding over school events and dinner parties with effortless grace. But in the shadows, she was a woman chasing a thrill that felt like freedom. The unraveling came abruptly. Daniel discovered a text, one she'd meant to delete, left carelessly in a private app. "I can't stop thinking about you, Lucas. The way you say my name, it's like I'm alive again." That evening, Daniel didn't erupt in anger or collapse in tears. He read the girls their bedtime stories, pressed a gentle kiss to Eleanor's temple, and retreated to his study. There, he poured a glass of bourbon and made two calls, one to a private investigator, the other to his lawyer. His pain was palpable, but so was his resolve. He wasn't just wounded, he was strategizing, his mind as sharp as ever. By the next morning, Daniel had a plan. The investigator's report arrived swiftly, a dossier of damning evidence. Timestamps, hotel invoices, grainy photos of Eleanor and Lucas stealing a kiss in a downtown parking garage. The most incriminating was a security still from the firm's executive floor, blurry but unmistakable, capturing a moment that could ruin her career. Daniel didn't confront her. He didn't need to. He waited, his patience a weapon honed by years of restraint. When Eleanor broached the idea of a solo trip, "Daniel, I think I need some time to rediscover myself," he didn't flinch. "Take as long as you need," he said, his voice even. She hesitated, unsettled by his calm. "You're sure?" she pressed. He nodded. "Absolutely." It was that quiet certainty that sent a shiver down her spine. 3 days later, Eleanor boarded a flight to a coastal retreat Lucas had arranged, convinced she held the reins. But back in Portland, Daniel was moving pieces into place. He sat down with their daughters, Lila, 17, and Sophie, 15. With measured words, he laid bare the truth. Their mother's affair, the lies, the evidence. Lila's eyes hardened. She'd already suspected the late-night work calls. Sophie, quieter, simply asked, "What happens now?" Daniel's answer was steady. "We build something new." As Eleanor sipped wine under a starlit sky, Daniel acted. He secured the girls' college funds, closed joint accounts, and sold their second car. He tipped off HR at Eleanor's firm anonymously, citing Lucas's misconduct with a colleague during work hours. He even reached out to Lucas's fiancée, Claire, a woman he'd never met. Her voice was tired, but unsurprised when she answered. "I had a feeling," she said. "I just didn't know who." By morning, Lucas's belongings were strewn across Claire's front yard. Eleanor's return was a rude awakening. She arrived home, sun-kissed and oblivious, only to find the locks changed and a manila envelope waiting on the porch. Inside were divorce papers and a note in Daniel's precise handwriting. "No need to knock. This isn't your home anymore." The neighbors' curtains twitched, but no one approached. Word had already spread, a wildfire Daniel hadn't needed to ignite. Eleanor stood frozen, her suitcase at her side, the weight of her choices crashing down. Eleanor Harper's world began to fracture the moment she stepped off the plane, her skin still warm from the coastal sun. She stood on the porch of her Portland home, staring at the locked door and the envelope bearing Daniel's handwriting. The note inside, "No need to knock. This isn't your home anymore," was a blade, precise and unyielding. Her suitcase sat heavy beside her, a silent witness to her unraveling. The neighborhood, usually alive with the hum of evening routines, felt eerily still. Curtains twitched, but no one emerged. Eleanor's perfect facade had crumbled, and the whispers had already begun. She tried calling Daniel. Straight to voicemail. She texted Lila and Sophie, her daughters, but the messages sat unread. Desperate, she dialed Lucas, only to be met with a cold, automated voice. His number was disconnected. The weight of isolation pressed down, and for the first time, Eleanor felt the true cost of her choices. She drove to a budget motel on the city's edge, its neon sign flickering like a warning. The room was stark, peeling wallpaper, a faucet that dripped relentlessly, a bed that creaked under her weight. She sat on the thin mattress, clutching the divorce papers, and began to read. The terms were merciless. Daniel sought full custody of Lila and Sophie, backed by the investigator's report, a chilling catalog of her infidelity. Timestamps, receipts, photos. One image burned into her mind. Her and Lucas at a diner, her hand on his, her wedding ring glinting under fluorescent lights. The document listed asset divisions with surgical clarity. Joint accounts closed, emergency savings transferred, the house solely in Daniel's name. Spousal support? None. Ground for divorce. Infidelity and abandonment. A final line, typed in crisp font, sent a shiver through her. Any attempt to contest custody or publicize this matter will result in the release of additional evidence to the courts and relevant parties. Eleanor's breath caught. She hadn't just lost her family. She'd been outmaneuvered. Daniel, the man she'd once dismissed as predictable, had dismantled her life with the precision of a chess master. She didn't sleep that night. The motel's thin walls carried the sounds of distant arguments and creaking pipes, mirroring the chaos in her mind. Her phone remained silent. No replies from her daughters. No outreach from friends. She scrolled through her contacts, hesitating over names she'd once called allies. Finally, she texted her closest friend, Miriam, from their old book club. The response was swift and cutting. "You told us Daniel was distant. Well, it turns out you were the one checking out. Don't call me again." Across town, Daniel was carving out a new beginning. He'd leased a cozy townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, its walls warmed by the girls' laughter. Lila, sharp and perceptive, had taken to cooking dinners, her playlists filling the kitchen with indie beats. Sophie, more reserved, spent evenings sketching or helping Daniel with her calculus homework. The house wasn't grand, but it was theirs, a sanctuary free of Eleanor's deceit. Daniel had restarted therapy, a practice he'd abandoned years ago. His therapist, Dr. Chun, offered a perspective that lingered. Letting go isn't about erasing the pain. It's about refusing to let it define you. Daniel wasn't ready to forgive, but he was learning to release. He'd already purged the old house of Eleanor's presence. Her designer dresses were donated, her jewelry boxed away, her photos removed. Only one remained, a snapshot of Lila and Sophie at a school fair, their faces painted with butterflies, holding a banner that read, "We love you, Dad." It lived in his wallet, a reminder of what he was fighting for. At night, he walked the neighborhood with Lila or read with Sophie, their conversations slowly rebuilding the trust Eleanor had fractured. The girls didn't ask about their mother. They didn't need to. They'd seen enough. Eleanor, meanwhile, was grappling with a shrinking world. Her job at the firm was gone, terminated via a curt email citing violations of professional conduct. She tried to appeal, but the evidence Daniel had shared with HR, screenshots, timestamps, that damning security still, was ironclad. Lucas had been fired the same week, the affair now office gossip that spread faster than she could contain. Her LinkedIn profile, once a beacon of professional pride, sat stagnant, connections quietly distancing themselves. Even her Pilates group stopped responding to her messages. She called another friend, Tara, only to be met with a weary sigh. "You painted Daniel as the problem, Eleanor. We believed you. And all along, you're lying to our faces." Desperate for an anchor, Eleanor reached out to Claire, Lucas's fiancée. The call was brief, Claire's voice steady but laced with pain. "You didn't just ruin your own life, Eleanor. You dragged mine down with you. I'm picking up the pieces. Good luck with yours." The line went dead. Eleanor sat in the motel's dim light, her phone heavy in her hand. She opened her photo gallery, scrolling through memories she'd taken for granted. Daniel grilling in the backyard, Sophie chasing fireflies, Lila's first debate win. The life she'd traded for fleeting thrills now felt like a dream she couldn't claw back. Lucas texted late that night. "Need a place to crash. Claire kicked me out. Can we talk?" Eleanor stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She typed a reply, then deleted it. The phone buzzed again, but she turned it off. The man who'd once set her heart racing now felt like a weight she couldn't carry. She lay back on the creaking bed, the ceiling stained with watermarks, and let the silence swallow her. For the first time, she didn't cry. She just felt empty. The next morning, Daniel stood in his new kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window. Lila was flipping pancakes, teasing Sophie about her latest art project. Daniel sipped his coffee, a small smile tugging at his lips. The girls were healing, and so was he. He hadn't confronted Eleanor, hadn't needed to. His actions spoke louder than any argument could. But he wasn't done. Tucked away in a safe was one final piece of evidence, a video from the firm's security feed, too explicit to ignore. He hadn't used it in the divorce filing. Not yet. It was his insurance, a shield against any attempt by Eleanor to rewrite the narrative. He didn't want to destroy her further, but he no longer trusted her to stay away. Eleanor Harper's new reality was a stark contrast to the life she'd once known. The motel room, with its flickering lights and threadbare carpet, had become her temporary refuge, but it felt more like a cage. Each morning, she woke to the same sinking realization. Her family, her career, her social circle, gone. The divorce papers, now creased from repeated readings, lay on the chipped nightstand, a constant reminder of Daniel's calculated severance. She tried calling him again, her voice trembling in a voicemail. "Daniel, please. I just want to know the girls are okay. I didn't mean for this to happen. Call me back." Silence was her only reply. She opened the folder again, her eyes scanning the terms she already knew by heart. Full custody for Daniel, backed by the investigator's damning report. Photos of her with Lucas, laughing in a hotel lobby, her wedding ring catching the light. The financial details were equally brutal. Joint accounts drained, The house solely Daniel's, no spousal support. The typed threat at the bottom haunted her. Any attempt to contest or publicize this matter will result in the release of additional evidence. She knew what that meant. The security footage, grainy but devastating, could end any hope of salvaging her reputation. Daniel had her cornered, and she'd underestimated him at every turn. Eleanor's days blurred into a cycle of desperation and isolation. Her phone, once buzzing with notifications, was now a graveyard of unanswered messages. She tried contacting her daughters, texting Lila a tentative, "I miss you," and Sophie a soft "thinking of you." Both went unanswered, marked as read. She called Lucas again, but his number remained disconnected. The man who'd once been her escape was now a ghost, leaving her to face the wreckage alone. Her former friends, once quick to share wine and gossip, had turned their backs. She reached out to another, Jenna, only to receive a curt text. "You made your choices, Eleanor. Don't expect me to clean up the mess." Her job loss stung deepest. The firm's termination email cited conduct unbecoming, and her attempts to appeal were met with cold formality. The evidence Daniel had provided, timestamps, photos that cursed security still, was airtight. The office rumor mill had churned relentlessly, and her name was now synonymous with scandal. Her LinkedIn profile, once a showcase of her finance expertise, was a digital tomb, ignored by recruiters and former colleagues alike. Even her professional network, painstakingly built over years, had evaporated. In a last-ditch effort, Eleanor contacted Claire, Lucas's ex-fiancée, hoping for some shred of understanding. Claire's voice was calm but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. "You didn't just betray Daniel, Eleanor. You upended my life, too. I'm moving on. I suggest you try to do the same." The call ended abruptly, leaving Eleanor staring at the motel's cracked ceiling. She opened her phone's photo gallery, scrolling through images of happier times. Daniel teaching Sophie to ride a bike, Lila's proud smile at her first piano recital, family hikes in the Columbia Gorge. The memories were a cruel mirror, reflecting what she'd traded for fleeting passion. Across town, Daniel was thriving in his new normal. The townhouse he shared with Lila and Sophie was filled with warmth, the kind that comes from rebuilding on honest ground. Lila had taken to baking, her sourdough experiments filling the kitchen with earthy scents. Sophie, quieter but steadier, had started a sketchbook filled with intricate drawings of the city's bridges. Daniel, for his part, was rediscovering himself. His therapy sessions with Dr. Chun were a lifeline, each one peeling back layers of pain and resentment. "Healing isn't about forgetting," Dr. Chun had said. "It's about choosing what you carry forward." Daniel was choosing his daughters, his peace, his future. He'd erased nearly all traces of Eleanor from their lives. Her books, her scented candles, her framed art prints, donated or stored away. The only photo he kept was of Lila and Sophie at a summer camp, their faces smeared with marshmallow from a campfire. It stayed tucked in his wallet, a talisman of their resilience. At night, he and the girls fell into a rhythm. Board games with Lila, stargazing with Sophie, quiet moments that felt like home. They rarely spoke of Eleanor, but when they did, it was with a shared understanding. Lila, ever direct, had said, "She chose him over us. That's not our fault." Sophie had nodded, adding softly, "I just want us to be okay." Eleanor's world continued to shrink. She moved from the motel to a cramped studio apartment, its radiator clanking and its windows rattling in the Portland rain. She took a low-level job at a medical billing office, a far cry from her days commanding boardrooms. The work was monotonous, but it paid the rent. She wore a mask of normalcy at the office, smiling at coworkers and nodding through small talk, but the facade cracked at night. Alone, she'd sit with a microwaved meal, her thoughts spiraling. The scent of rain, a song on the radio, the memory of Lila's laugh. It all cut deeper than she'd expected. One evening, Lucas showed up at her apartment unannounced, his jacket damp from the drizzle. He held a takeout coffee, his smile strained. "I've got nowhere else to go. Claire's done with me. My family shut me out." His words, once intoxicating, now felt like a plea she couldn't answer. She stood in the doorway, blocking his entry. I'm not your safe haven, Lucas. I'm barely holding myself together. He pressed, his voice cracking. We meant something, didn't we? That wasn't just nothing. Eleanor shook her head, her voice barely audible. It was a fantasy, and it cost me everything. She closed the door, her hands trembling. For the first time, she saw the affair for what it was. Not love, not even desire, but a desperate bid to feel alive. She'd chased a mirage, and the price was her family, her identity, her place in the world. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the rain streak the glass, and let the truth settle. She hadn't just betrayed Daniel. She betrayed herself. Meanwhile, Daniel prepared for the next phase. He'd secured the girls' futures, their college funds untouchable, their home a fortress of stability. But he held one final card, the security video, too potent to use lightly. It wasn't about revenge, it was about protection. If Eleanor tried to manipulate the narrative or disrupt their peace, he'd be ready. For now, he focused on the present. Lila's upcoming debate tournament, Sophie's art show, a life that was slowly, steadily blooming anew. Eleanor Harper's life had become a study in solitude. Her studio apartment, with its peeling paint and humming refrigerator, was a far cry from the craftsman home she'd once curated with pride. Each morning, she rose to the same routine: a cup of instant coffee, a commute to her medical billing job, and a day spent blending into the background. The work was mechanical, the office fluorescent and sterile, but it kept her afloat. At night, she returned to her dim apartment, where memories ambushed her without warning. A whiff of rosemary from a neighbor's cooking, the echo of Sophie's giggle in a passing child's laugh. The weight of her losses pressed harder in the quiet. She'd stopped trying to contact Daniel. His silence was a wall, unyielding and absolute. Her messages to Lila and Sophie went unanswered, though she still sent them. Tentative notes for birthdays, I'm proud of you for no reason at all. The divorce papers, now stored in a drawer, were a settled verdict. Daniel had won, not through rage, but through strategy, leaving her with nothing but regret and a closet of clothes that no longer fit her life. The investigator's report, with its photos and timestamps, haunted her. One image lingered. Her and Lucas in a car, her head tilted back in laughter, oblivious to the camera. She hadn't just broken her vows, she'd dismantled her world. Eleanor's social exile was nearly complete. Her former friends, once a vibrant circle of brunches and book clubs, had vanished. She tried emailing one last ally, Carla, only to receive a blunt reply. You lied to us, Elle. You let us think Daniel was the problem. I can't trust you anymore. The rejection stung, but it was expected. Her professional network was equally barren. Her LinkedIn profile was a ghost town, her emails to former colleagues ignored. The scandal of her affair had spread like ink in water, staining every corner of her old life. Even Claire, Lucas's ex-fiancée, had moved on, her final words to Eleanor a quiet dismissal. I'm rebuilding. You should try it. Lucas himself had become a fading shadow. After his desperate visit to her apartment, he'd texted a few more times, each message more pleading than the last. I'm sorry, Elle. I've got nowhere else to turn. She didn't respond. The man who'd once ignited her now seemed small, his charm eroded by the consequences they'd both reaped. She deleted his number, not out of anger, but exhaustion. The affair, she now saw, wasn't about him. It was about her, a futile attempt to reclaim a version of herself she'd lost long before Lucas appeared. The realization didn't bring peace, only clarity. Across Portland, Daniel's life was blossoming. The townhouse he shared with Lila and Sophie was a haven of warmth, filled with the clatter of dishes and the girls' banter. Lila had joined a debate team, her sharp wit earning her a spot at regionals. Sophie's sketches had caught the eye of her art teacher, who'd entered her work in a local exhibit. Daniel, too, was finding his footing. His therapy sessions with Dr. Chun had become a cornerstone, each one helping him untangle the knots of betrayal. You don't have to forgive her, Dr. Chun had said, but you can choose to let her go. Daniel was trying, not for Eleanor's sake, but for his own. He'd built a new rhythm with the girls. Evenings were spent cooking together, Lila experimenting with recipes while Sophie set the table with her quiet precision. They laughed more now, the tension of their old life fading. Daniel kept only one relic of Eleanor, a photo of Lila and Sophie at a zoo, their faces lit with wonder as they watched a lion cub. It stayed in his wallet, a reminder of what he'd protected. The girls rarely mentioned their mother, but when they did, it was with a mix of pity and resolve. She made her choice, Lila said one night, her voice firm. Sophie nodded, adding softly, I just hope she's okay. Eleanor's days settled into a gray monotony. Her job at the billing office paid the bills, but it offered no purpose. She smiled at coworkers, made small talk about the weather, but kept her distance. At night, she'd sit by her apartment's lone window, watching the city's lights flicker through the rain. She'd stopped crying weeks ago, her grief replaced by a hollow acceptance. She began to journal, scribbling thoughts in a cheap notebook. I thought I was invisible. I thought I needed to be seen. But I was seen by Daniel, by the girls. I just couldn't see myself. The words didn't heal her, but they gave her something to hold on to. One afternoon, while waiting at a coffee shop, Eleanor caught sight of Daniel. He was with a woman, tall, with auburn hair pulled into a loose bun, her laugh warm and unguarded. She leaned into Daniel as they shared a pastry, his hand resting lightly on her arm. They looked comfortable, not in the rushed way of new romance, but in the quiet ease of connection. Eleanor's chest tightened. She turned away, abandoning her order, and hurried to her car. In the parking lot, she gripped the steering wheel, her breath uneven. It wasn't jealousy that shook her. It was the finality. Daniel wasn't just moving on. He was happy. That night, Eleanor wrote a letter. She didn't expect Daniel to read it, but the act of writing felt like a release. Daniel, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even deserve your time. But I need you to know I remember. The way you'd leave notes in my lunch bag, the way you'd fix the porch light before I noticed it was out. You gave me everything, and I threw it away because I was lost in myself. I'm not asking to come back. I just want you to know I see it now. Tell Lila and Sophie I love them, that they're stronger than I'll ever be. I won't fight you. I won't hurt you again. She mailed it the next day, no return address, no expectations. Daniel received the letter that evening. He read it once, his face unreadable, then folded it and tucked it into a drawer with old tax forms and birthday cards. He didn't cry, not because he was unmoved, but because his grief had long since settled into something quieter, something he could carry. He hadn't used the security video, still locked in his safe. He didn't plan to. It wasn't about destruction. It was about ensuring his family's peace. For now, he focused on the present. Lila's debate prep, Sophie's art show, a life that no longer revolved around Eleanor's shadow. Eleanor, meanwhile, began to take small steps. She bought a plant for her apartment, a fern that thrived despite her neglect. She started reading again, dog-eared novels from a used bookstore. The motions felt hollow, but they were hers. She wasn't healing, not yet, but she was surviving. And in the silence of her new life, she began to listen, to herself, to the woman she'd buried beneath years of restlessness. Eleanor Harper's life had settled into a quiet, solitary rhythm. Her studio apartment, with its creaking floors and drafty windows, was now home, though it felt more like a way station. Each day followed a predictable pattern, a commute to her medical billing job, hours spent processing claims under fluorescent lights, and evenings alone with a book or a reheated meal. The fern on her windowsill, her one small act of care, thrived despite the gloom. She no longer cried over her losses, but the ache remained, a constant companion, sharpest when she passed families in the park or heard a song that reminded her of Lila's piano recitals. Her old life in Portland's sunlit suburbs felt like a story that belonged to someone else. She'd stopped reaching out to Daniel and the girls. The letter she'd sent, poured out in a moment of raw honesty, had gone unanswered, as she'd expected. She didn't know where they lived now, only that they were together, safe, moving forward without her. Her attempts to stay connected with Lila and Sophie, a birthday card, a brief text, were met with silence or Once, a single reply from Lila, "We're fine. Please stop." The words cut, but Eleanor honored them. She'd lost the right to demand their attention. The divorce was final, the terms unchallenged. Daniel's victory was complete, not through cruelty, but through the quiet dismantling of her place in their world. Eleanor's social and professional circles had all but vanished. Her former friends, once a lifeline of laughter and support, were gone, their rejection cemented by her lies. Her career, once a source of pride, was a distant memory. The billing job was a necessity, not a calling. She avoided social media, knowing her name carried the stain of scandal. Lucas, too, had faded entirely. His last text, weeks ago, had gone unanswered, and she'd heard through a mutual acquaintance that he'd left Portland, chasing a fresh start elsewhere. She wished him no ill, but felt no longing. He was a chapter she'd closed, a mistake she'd carry forever. In her solitude, Eleanor began to rebuild, if only in small ways. She joined a library book club, sitting quietly among strangers who didn't know her past. She started walking the city's trails, the crunch of gravel underfoot a grounding force. Her journal, now half-filled, became a space to confront herself. "I thought I was chasing life, but I was running from it. Daniel didn't make me invisible. I did that to myself." The words didn't erase her guilt, but they gave her a path to understanding. She wasn't whole, but she was no longer breaking. Across town, Daniel's life was a testament to resilience. The townhouse he shared with Lila and Sophie was alive with purpose. Lila had won a debate trophy, her confidence blooming, while Sophie's artwork was featured in a city gallery, her quiet pride evident in her smile. Daniel, too, had found a new ease. His therapy with Dr. Chun had helped him release the last tendrils of anger, not for Eleanor's sake, but for his own. "You've built something real," Dr. Chun had said. "That's your strength." The girls filled the house with music and laughter, their bond with Daniel unshakable. The woman from the coffee shop, Anna, had become a steady presence. A librarian with a warm laugh and a love for poetry, she brought no pretense, only honesty. Their relationship was unhurried, built on shared walks and quiet conversations. Lila and Sophie liked her, not as a replacement for Eleanor, but as someone who fit into their new normal. Anna's presence was a balm, proof that life could grow again after devastation. Daniel kept the photo of the girls at the zoo in his wallet, but he no longer needed it as a shield. His future was here, in the present. Eleanor saw them once more, by chance, at a farmer's market. Daniel was buying apples, Anna at his side, her hand brushing his as they laughed. Lila and Sophie were nearby, sampling honey from a vendor, their faces bright. Eleanor watched from a distance, hidden behind a stall. They looked like a family, whole and unburdened. Her heart twisted, not with envy, but with a piercing clarity. She'd lost them, not just as a wife and mother, but as a part of their story. She turned away, her basket empty, and walked back to her car. That night, Eleanor opened an old photo album she'd kept, its pages worn from years of love. There was Daniel, young and beaming, on their wedding day, Lila and Sophie as toddlers, chasing bubbles in the backyard. She traced their faces, her voice a whisper. "I broke us." The admission wasn't new, but it felt final. She closed the album and placed it in a box, not to forget, but to let go. Daniel, meanwhile, sat with Anna on the townhouse porch, a soft jazz playlist drifting from the open window. The girls were inside, planning a movie night. He hadn't used the security video, still locked away, and likely never would. It wasn't about holding power over Eleanor. It was about protecting what he'd built. His silence, as always, was his strength. He'd received no further letters, no pleas, and he didn't expect them. Eleanor was a chapter closed, her absence no longer a wound but a fact. Months later, Eleanor stood in her apartment, the fern now joined by a second plant, a small cactus thriving in the sunlight. She'd been promoted at work, a minor step but hers. The book club had become a weekly ritual, and she'd even spoken up once, sharing a thought on a novel that earned a nod from the group. She wasn't the woman she'd been, nor did she want to be. She was something new, forged in the quiet of her mistakes. One evening, she wrote a final note, not to send but to keep, to Lila and Sophie, "I'll always love you." To Daniel, "Thank you for showing me what strength looks like." To me, "Keep going." She tucked it into her journal and turned off the light. Across the city, Daniel raised a glass with Anna, the girls' laughter echoing from the kitchen. Life had moved on, and it carried them forward, leaving Eleanor to find her own way in the silence.